It was another long evening at the Grand Hotel, and the sound of clinking glasses and soft music filled the air. The ballroom was dressed in gold and white, the tables glowing under warm chandeliers. People in elegant clothes were laughing, talking, and enjoying themselves as waiters moved quietly between them, carrying trays of food and drinks. Among them was a young woman named Lena. She wore the same black and white uniform as everyone else, her hair tied neatly back, her steps careful and quiet. To most people in the room, she was invisible, just another face among the hotel staff. But if someone had looked closely, they might have noticed something different about her eyes. They were calm but distant, like she was somewhere else in her mind, far away from the noise and sparkle around her. Lena had been working at the hotel for almost a year. Every evening she served guests who barely noticed her. Some smiled politely, but most looked past her as if she were just part of the furniture. She didn't mind anymore. She wasn't here to be seen. She was here to earn enough to help her mother, who had fallen ill 2 years ago. Each shift was long and tiring. Her back ached by the end of the night, and her feet felt like they were made of stone. But she never complained. She just smiled softly when spoken to, and did her work with quiet grace. That night, the hotel was hosting a big corporate event. Important business people, foreign guests, and company directors had gathered to celebrate an anniversary. The tables were full and everyone seemed in a good mood. There was laughter, the smell of roasted food, and the sound of crystal glasses tapping in cheers. As Lena walked past the stage with a tray of appetizers, her eyes caught something that made her pause for half a second. A grand piano. It stood at the center of the stage, polished so perfectly that it reflected the soft light from the chandeliers. Her heart gave a small, unexpected pull. For a moment, everything else around her faded, the chatter, the footsteps, the music. All she could see was the piano. It had been years since she had sat in front of one. Years since her fingers had touched the cool, smooth keys and created something beautiful. Back then, music had been her world. When she was younger, Lena had studied at a music academy. Her teachers often said she had a gift. She could make a piano speak. While others practiced with precision, she played with feeling. Each note came from her heart, and her performances often brought people close to tears. But dreams, no matter how bright, can sometimes fade faster than anyone expects. Her father passed away suddenly when she was 19, and her mother's health began to fail soon after. The medical bills started piling up, and the house they lived in began to fall apart. Lena tried to hold on to her studies, but the pressure was too much. She remembered the day she decided to leave the academy. Her professor had begged her to stay, telling her that she was born to play. But she couldn't think about music anymore when her mother was at home struggling to breathe. She promised herself she would come back one day once things got better. That day never came. Now, years later, she was working as a waitress in a place where she once dreamed of performing. The irony was painful, but she had learned to hide it well. Every time she passed a piano, she smiled politely and walked away. Tonight, however, something inside her stirred again. As she looked at the stage, she imagined herself sitting there, her fingers gliding across the keys, the music flowing freely through the hall. But the vision disappeared as quickly as it came when her supervisor's voice broke her thoughts. "Lena, tray number 6 is waiting. Move faster, please," he said sharply, waving his hand impatiently. She blinked and nodded quickly. "Yes, sir," she replied softly, taking the tray and weaving her way through the tables again. The supervisor wasn't a bad man, just strict and often stressed. Events like this made everyone tense. The guests were demanding, and any small mistake could mean a complaint. So Lena kept her head down and worked quietly, making sure every glass was filled, every table clean. As the night went on, she began to feel the weight of exhaustion settle in. Her feet throbbed, but she pushed through it. She'd learned how to smile even when she was tired. Around her, laughter grew louder and the music changed to something cheerful. The event's entertainment for the night was a well-known pianist from the city, who was supposed to perform soon. Lena overheard 2 guests talking about him. "They say he played for the mayor last week," one man said proudly to his companion. "Quite a talent. This hotel is lucky to have him tonight." Lena nodded politely as she placed their drinks, though inside she felt a quiet ache. Once people had said things like that about her. Once she too had been called a talent. When she walked away, she passed the piano again, her eyes drawn to it like a magnet. The piano's cover was still down, waiting. Its silence almost spoke to her. She wondered if the musician ever got nervous before big performances. She wondered if he still felt joy when he played, or if it had turned into just another job for him. She missed the feeling, the way her heart would race just before her fingers touched the keys, the way everything else in the world disappeared once she began to play. It was freedom pure and complete now. She only felt trapped, by circumstances, by duty, by the heavy uniform she wore every day. When the dinner service reached its peak, Lena found herself near the kitchen doors, wiping her hands on a towel. Her friend and co-worker May came up beside her, grinning. "You look tired," May said teasingly. Lena smiled weakly. "I'm fine. Just a long night." "You always say that," May laughed. "You know, sometimes I wonder if you ever rest." "I rest," Lena said quietly, though she knew it wasn't true. Most nights she stayed up late helping her mother with medication or bills. May leaned closer and whispered, "Did you see the piano? It's huge. You ever play one of those?" Lena hesitated. "I used to," she said softly. "Really?" May's eyes widened. "Like, seriously play?" "Yeah, a long time ago." May smiled brightly. "You never told me that." "You should play sometime." Lena laughed gently, shaking her head. "I don't think so. Not anymore." "Why not?" May asked. "If you can still play, you should. It's like a gift, right?" Lena didn't answer right away. She looked back toward the ballroom where guests were laughing and clapping, where everything seemed bright and full of life. "Sometimes," she said finally, "a gift is something you have to put away for a while." May looked at her curiously but didn't push further. Just then, the event manager walked by, looking flustered and talking rapidly into a headset. He was pacing near the stage, glancing at the piano. Something was clearly wrong, but no one knew what. Lena didn't pay much attention. She went back to her work, cleaning up a table and refilling glasses. As she moved around, the memory of her younger self came back vividly. The days of rehearsals, the soft scent of old piano rooms, her mother sitting proudly in the front row during her first recital. She had been so sure that music would take her somewhere. She had imagined traveling, performing, maybe even teaching someday. But life had other plans. The night stretched on, and fatigue began to blur her thoughts. She moved mechanically now, pick up, pour, smile, walk away. Yet inside her, something restless was stirring. Maybe it was because she was surrounded by music again, or maybe it was just the piano sitting there waiting, reminding her of what she used to love. When she passed the stage again near the end of the dinner, she slowed her pace, just for a second. Her hand brushed lightly over the piano's glossy surface as she went by. It was cold and smooth, but it sent a spark through her fingertips as if the instrument remembered her too. She didn't realize that one of the guests, an elderly woman sitting nearby, noticed the moment. The woman smiled faintly as if she understood something no one else did. Lena continued on, unaware of the eyes watching her. She went back to clearing tables, humming softly to herself. It was an old melody, one she used to play for her mother when she was a child. The notes came out in a whisper, just under her breath, but they carried a strange beauty even without an instrument. One of the guests nearby turned his head, trying to place where the sound came from, but Lena had already moved on to another table. As the evening wound down, Lena looked at the clock. Just one more hour, she told herself. Then she could go home, check on her mother, and maybe rest for a few hours before the morning shift. She didn't know that the next hour would change everything. She didn't know that fate, silent and unpredictable, was waiting for the smallest moment to open, a door she thought had been closed forever. And she certainly didn't know that before the night ended she would be standing on that stage, under the same chandelier light, not as a waitress, but as something she was always meant to be. But for now, she just carried another tray, her eyes occasionally drawn toward the piano, the past quietly whispering her name. The night was running smoothly until a sudden change in the air unsettled everyone. The event had been planned perfectly. Beautiful lighting, perfect dinner service, and a full crowd waiting for the highlight of the evening, the live piano performance. But as the time approached for the musician to appear, something seemed wrong. The stage lights stayed dim, the piano lid remained closed, and the event manager, a man always known for his control, now looked nervous. He was pacing back and forth near the stage, talking rapidly into his earpiece. Lena noticed it while refilling glasses at one of the tables close to the front. She saw him checking his watch, frowning, whispering sharply to one of the staff. His tone carried frustration and worry. Then in a few minutes, whispers began to spread. The pianist who was supposed to perform, the one the guests had been excited to hear, was stuck in traffic. There had been a minor accident on the main road, and no one knew when he would arrive. The manager's face went pale. The guests were starting to look at the stage, expecting music soon. Some were tapping their fingers on the table impatiently, others checking the time. The program couldn't stop, not with so many important people watching. Lena continued her work quietly, trying not to draw attention, though she could feel the tension rising in the air. Her friend May came over, whispering, "The performer's late. The boss is freaking out." Lena glanced toward the manager, who was rubbing his temples in frustration. "I can tell," she said softly. "I heard he wants anyone to play until the real guy arrives," May added. Her voice half excited, half worried. Lena laughed lightly, trying to shake off the idea. "Who's going to play in front of all these people?" "It's not that easy." "I don't know," May replied with a shrug. "But if no one does, the guests are going to start complaining." As they spoke, the manager suddenly raised his voice. "Does anyone here know how to play piano?" He shouted, scanning the staff standing near the entrance. The waiters exchanged uncertain glances. A few laughed nervously. No one moved. The manager sighed heavily. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Then one of the senior servers, an older man who had worked there for years, spoke up without thinking. "Lena plays?" he said casually, pointing in her direction. Lena froze. The tray in her hand trembled slightly. The manager turned instantly. "Who?" The older man nodded at her. "Her, the quiet one. I've seen her in the staff room playing on her phone sometimes. Piano videos. She used to study music, I think." Every head near them turned toward her. Lena felt her face heat up. I don't," she began, but the manager was already walking toward her. "You can play?" he asked quickly, his voice a mix of hope and command. Lena hesitated. "A little," she said quietly. "But it's been years." "Good enough," he said. "We need someone right now." "Just play something simple. Anything. We can't have the guests sitting in silence." She shook her head, almost whispering. "I can't. I haven't performed in a long time. I'll make mistakes." He frowned, clearly desperate. "Miss, I don't have time for this. It's only for a few minutes. You'll save the event if you help. Please." His words, "save the event," echoed in her mind. Around her, other waiters were watching, some whispering. May's eyes were wide with surprise. "You really can play?" She mouthed silently. Lena swallowed hard. "I don't know," she said weakly. Her heart was pounding now. The thought of sitting in front of all those guests made her stomach twist. She wasn't ready for this. Not anymore. But before she could protest again, the manager gently took the tray from her hands. "Come on, just 5 minutes," he said firmly. "You'll be fine." The next thing she knew, he was guiding her toward the stage. Every step felt heavier than the last. The bright lights made her eyes sting. The guests were still talking among themselves, unaware of what was happening yet. When she reached the stairs leading to the stage, Lena stopped. She could see the piano up close now. Black, glossy, beautiful. It looked both familiar and strange, like a friend she hadn't seen in years. Her hands felt cold. The manager turned to her, his voice lower now, almost gentle. "You can do this. Just start with something soft, something nice. Keep it simple. I'll handle the announcements." He walked to the microphone and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began with a nervous smile. "Unfortunately, our scheduled pianist has been delayed due to unexpected circumstances. However, one of our very own staff members has kindly agreed to keep you entertained for a while. Please give her a warm welcome." There was polite applause, the kind people give when they don't know what to expect. Lena's legs felt weak. Her breath came short. She wanted to run, to hide, to say no, but it was too late. She climbed the last step onto the stage. The lights felt hot on her skin. The room was huge, filled with people watching her. She could hear the faint clinking of cutlery and murmurs of curiosity. Some guests were already whispering to each other, probably wondering why a waitress was sitting at the piano. She sat down slowly on the bench, her heart racing. Her reflection stared back at her from the piano's surface. It had been so long since she'd touched one. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling their cool smoothness. For a moment she forgot where she was. A tiny part of her heart ached with recognition. Then the silence in the room reminded her everyone was waiting. She took a deep breath. Her hands hovered over the keys. She tried to remember something, anything, that she could still play. A piece from her student days came to mind. Simple, soft, and full of emotion. She closed her eyes and let her fingers press down gently. The first notes came out shaky, uncertain. She missed one, then another. A few guests exchanged looks. Someone coughed quietly. Lena felt her cheeks burn. She almost stopped right there. But something deep inside told her to keep going. She took another breath and began again, slower this time. The melody started to take shape. Her fingers moved more confidently now, remembering patterns they thought they'd forgotten. The sound floated through the hall, gentle, peaceful, sincere. The guests began to quiet down. The chatter faded. The room started to listen. Lena's heart steadied. Each note began to carry a piece of her exhaustion, her memories, her hope. She wasn't just playing for them anymore. She was playing for herself, for her mother, for the girl she used to be. It felt strange, but also right. The light above her shimmered softly, reflecting off the polished surface of the piano. She let the music grow a little louder, richer, fuller. The people in the audience sat still now, surprised by the sound coming from someone who just moments ago had been serving their drinks. Her co-workers peeked from the side of the stage, their mouths slightly open. May covered her mouth in disbelief, her eyes shining. The manager, who had been pacing nervously a few minutes ago, stood frozen near the sound system, his mouth half open, completely stunned by what he was hearing. Lena didn't notice any of it. She was lost inside the music. The song filled every corner of the ballroom. It was soft but powerful, like a story being told without words. She could feel her old self waking up again, the young pianist who had once believed she could conquer the world. For a brief moment, the uniform she wore didn't matter. The tables and trays didn't matter. Only the piano and her heart existed. When she finished the last note, it hung in the air for a few seconds, fading slowly into silence. Then came the applause. It started with a few hands, then grew louder until the entire hall was clapping. Some people even stood. The sound was overwhelming. Lena blinked, unsure how to react. She looked around, almost dazed. The manager was smiling for the first time that night. Her coworkers were cheering quietly from the side. She stood up slowly, giving a shy bow. The lights felt softer now, the room brighter. For the first time in years, she felt alive. When she stepped down from the stage, her hands were still trembling. May rushed to her and hugged her tightly. "You were amazing," she whispered. Lena smiled weakly. "I didn't know I could still do it." The manager came over, his face full of relief and amazement. "You saved us," he said, shaking his head. "I can't believe that just happened." "You're incredible." Lena blushed and looked down. "I just did what I could." "Did what you could?" he repeated with a laugh. "You did more than that." The guests loved it. From the corner of the room, a few people approached, asking her name, complimenting her performance. One woman even said, "You play like you were born for it." Lena thanked them politely, still in disbelief. Her heart was still beating fast, but not from fear anymore, from something else, something she hadn't felt in years. When the real pianist finally arrived, breathless, apologetic, and late, the crowd had already been won over. The manager told him not to worry, that everything was fine. The show had gone on, thanks to someone no one had expected. As the evening ended and the guests began to leave, Lena helped clean up quietly again, but her mind was far away. The piano still gleamed on the stage, and she couldn't help glancing at it from time to time. It was strange how one unexpected moment could change everything. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't even know if she'd ever get the chance to play again. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark, a small light that told her maybe, just maybe, her story with music wasn't over yet. That night, when she walked home under the soft city lights, she couldn't stop smiling. The cool air brushed her face and her heart felt lighter. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that something had shifted. The girl who once walked away from her dream had found her way back without planning it, without expecting it, without even realizing she still could. And as she disappeared down the quiet street, Her mind replayed the melody she had played earlier softly, as if the music itself was walking beside her. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the small apartment where Lena lived with her mother. The air smelled faintly of coffee and detergent. It was quiet, except for the sound of a kettle boiling in the kitchen and the faint hum of a radio playing an old song. Her mother sat in a chair by the window, knitting slowly. She looked up when Lena came out of her room, still sleepy, her hair tied loosely. "You came home late last night," her mother said softly. "Yes," Lena replied with a tired smile. The event ran longer than usual. Her mother studied her face for a moment, then said, "You look different. Happier, maybe." Lena laughed quietly and sat down beside her. "Something strange happened at work." Her mother set her knitting aside. "Strange? What happened?" Lena hesitated for a second, unsure how to explain. "They asked me to play the piano." Her mother's eyes widened. "You play? At the hotel?" Lena nodded, smiling a little. "The musician who was supposed to perform didn't show up. They were desperate. Someone mentioned that I used to play, and before I knew it, I was sitting on stage." Her mother's hands covered her mouth in surprise. "You played? After all this time?" "Yes," Lena said quietly. "I was scared at first. My hands were shaking so much I thought I'd faint. But then, I just started, and once I began, I couldn't stop." Her mother's eyes softened. "And how did it go?" Lena looked out the window, remembering the moment. The lights, the faces, the sound of applause. "They liked it," she said, almost in disbelief. People actually clapped. Some even stood up. Her mother reached out and squeezed her hand. "I always knew you would find your way back," she whispered. Lena smiled faintly, though her eyes were shining. Maybe it was just luck. They needed someone, and I happened to be there. But deep down, she knew it was more than luck. Something had woken up inside her last night. Something that had been silent for too long. After breakfast, she had to hurry to her next shift. The hotel had called her in early to help with cleanup and preparation for another event. When she arrived, the staff greeted her with grins and teasing smiles. "Look who we have here, the star of last night," one of the waiters joked. Another clapped her on the shoulder. "You should have seen the manager's face. He almost cried when you started playing." Lena laughed shyly, shaking her head. "It wasn't that special." "Yes, it was," May said, walking beside her. "Everyone was talking about you after you left. Even some guests asked about you." Lena blinked in surprise. "They did?" "Of course. They couldn't believe you were one of the staff. Some said you should be on stage, not serving food." Lena didn't know how to respond. A part of her wanted to smile, another part wanted to hide. The attention felt strange. She wasn't used to people noticing her. Later that afternoon, while she was arranging glasses near the bar, the manager called her into his office. She entered nervously, unsure if she had done something wrong. He looked up from his desk with a small smile. "Relax," he said. "You're not in trouble. I just wanted to thank you again for last night." Lena stood awkwardly, her hands clasped together. "It was nothing, sir." "It was everything," he replied. "If you hadn't stepped up, that event could have been a disaster. The guests loved you. I've already received 3 messages from people asking about the girl who played the piano." Her eyes widened. "They did?" "Yes," he said with a chuckle. "One of them is a local music producer. He said he wants to talk to you. Something about a small showcase next month." Lena's mouth fell open slightly. "A producer?" He nodded. "I told him I'd pass the message along. Here, this is his card." He handed her a small white business card. The name printed on it looked unfamiliar, almost unreal. She stared at it, unsure what to say. "I don't think I can—" "Why not?" the manager asked. "You have real talent, Lena. I've worked with a lot of people, but that performance, it was something special." She looked down at the card again. "I haven't played seriously in years. I'm not ready for anything like that." He smiled kindly. "Maybe not now, but maybe soon. Think about it, okay?" She nodded slowly, tucking the card into her pocket. "Thank you, sir." As she left the office, her thoughts were a storm. She couldn't focus for the rest of the day. The sound of plates, laughter, and music blended together into a blur. Her mind kept returning to that white card in her pocket and the feeling of her fingers on the piano keys. When her shift ended, she walked home slowly through the quiet streets. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, reflecting in little pools of rainwater. Every now and then, She caught herself humming the melody she had played the night before. At home, her mother was watching a TV show, but she turned down the volume when Lena entered. "How was work today?" "Good," Lena said softly, hanging her coat. "They thanked me again for yesterday." Her mother smiled. "You deserve it." Lena sat down beside her. "They also gave me a card from someone who wants to talk to me about music." Her mother looked at her, silent for a moment. "That's wonderful, isn't it?" "I don't know," Lena admitted. "What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if I've forgotten too much?" Her mother reached out and held her hand. "You didn't forget. Music doesn't leave you, dear. It just waits for you to come back." Those words stayed in her mind long after her mother went to bed. Later that night, she took out her old keyboard from the closet. It was dusty. Some of the keys slightly yellowed, but it still worked. She plugged it in and sat down, the room dimly lit by the small lamp beside her bed. For a while, she just stared at the keys, afraid to start. Then she pressed one softly. The sound was thin and small compared to the grand piano at the hotel, but it was enough. She played the same melody as before, slowly, carefully, feeling her way through it. Her hands were rusty, her timing off, but the feeling, the emotion, was still there. As she played, memories flooded back. Her first recital, her teacher's proud smile, her mother's clapping from the front row. She closed her eyes and let herself drift into the music, forgetting everything else. When she finally stopped, tears had filled her eyes. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. Relief, maybe. She hadn't lost it. Not completely. Over the next few days, Lena kept playing in secret. Every night after work, she'd sit by the old keyboard and practice. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for hours. She didn't tell anyone, not even May. It was her quiet world again. One evening, while she was on her break at the hotel, she saw the manager talking to a well-dressed man near the bar. They both glanced in her direction, and a few moments later the manager called her over. "Lena, this is Mr. Hahn," he said. "He's the producer I mentioned." The man smiled warmly. "So you're the waitress who stunned everyone last week." Lena blushed. "I don't know about that," he laughed softly. "Well, I was there, and I haven't stopped thinking about that performance. You played with feeling. That's rare these days." "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm putting together a small charity concert next month," he continued. "Local musicians, simple setting. Nothing big, but good exposure. I'd like you to be part of it." Lena froze. "Me? I'm not a professional anymore." "You don't have to be," he said gently. "You just have to play. People can tell when someone means what they play. That's what matters." She didn't answer right away. The offer scared her. It was too sudden, too unbelievable. "Think about it," he said, handing her another card. "Call me if you decide. No pressure." After he left, Lena stood there, speechless. May came up behind her, whispering excitedly, "Was that him? The producer? What did he say?" Lena showed her the card. "He wants me to play at some event." May's eyes went wide. "You have to do it." "I don't know if I can," Lena said. "Yes, you can," May insisted. "I heard you that night. Everyone did. You're incredible." For the first time in a long while, Lena felt a small spark of confidence. Maybe she could do it. Maybe she could try. That night, as she walked home, she thought about the offer. The idea of standing on stage again both terrified and thrilled her. She imagined the lights, the piano, the quiet before the first note. When she reached her apartment, she found her mother still awake, reading by the window. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" her mother asked without looking up. Lena smiled faintly. "You always know." Her mother put down her book. "Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. But don't hide from who you are anymore." Lena nodded. That night, she didn't sleep much. She lay awake, the melody of her old song playing softly in her mind. The next morning, she took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before the familiar voice answered. "Mr. Hahn speaking." "It's Lena," she said quietly. "I'll do it." There was a pause, then a warm smile in his tone. "Good, you won't regret it." When she hung up, she sat for a long moment, her heart pounding, a mix of fear and excitement rushing through her. For the first time in years, she had said yes to music again. And though she didn't know what waited ahead, she could feel it. Something was changing. Something beautiful was beginning again. The week passed quickly. Lena found herself torn between anticipation and fear. She couldn't stop thinking about the upcoming concert. Every morning she'd wake up to a flutter of nerves in her chest, and every night she'd practice for hours. The old keyboard in her apartment had become her closest companion. Each note, each chord felt like a conversation with herself, one she hadn't had in a long time. But despite her determination, doubt still crept in. She knew the event was coming closer. The producer, Mr. Hahn, had called twice to check in. He was kind, but his words made her question herself even more. "You'll do fine," he said, always assuring her. "Just trust the music." The idea of performing in front of people again, people who were there to listen, not just watch her serve drinks, seemed both thrilling and terrifying. She wasn't sure if she was ready. What if she messed up? What if the nerves took over? May, noticing how tense Lena was getting, couldn't help but ask, "Are you sure you want to do this? You're looking a little stressed out." Lena paused, glancing at her friend. "I don't know. I really want to, but I'm scared. I haven't performed in so long. What if I forget everything? Or worse, what if they don't like it?" May gave her a gentle smile. "Lena, no one's going to judge you. They'll be there for the music. For you, you're good. You've always been good. All you have to do is remember why you started playing in the first place. You've got this." Lena wasn't sure if she believed it, but hearing May's words made something stir inside her. She had always been her own worst critic. Maybe it was time to stop doubting herself. The days leading up to the concert felt like a blur. Every spare moment was spent practicing. Her hands felt sore, but every note she played made her feel a little more alive, a little more sure of herself. She went through her old music books, finding pieces she hadn't touched in years. Some she remembered easily. Others took more effort to bring back. But slowly, the pieces of herself she thought she had lost began to fall into place. The night before the concert, Lena couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her thoughts racing. What if the audience didn't connect with her music? What if she froze? She couldn't stop herself from imagining every possible mistake. The fear made her stomach churn, but as she lay there in the darkness, she remembered something her mother had once told her. The best performances come from the heart, not the hands. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her mind. The words her mother spoke were simple, but they were true. She wasn't playing for approval, for praise, or even for perfection. She was playing for herself, for the love of the music, for the joy it gave her. If she could just remember that, maybe the nerves wouldn't matter so much. The next morning, she woke up early and dressed quickly in the clothes she had prepared for the event. It was a simple black dress, professional but comfortable. As she glanced at herself in the mirror, she noticed the nervous energy still clinging to her, but there was something else too. Something new. It was a glimmer of excitement, of hope. The thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. At the hotel, everything felt different. The atmosphere was buzzing with activity as the event began to take shape. People in fancy clothes moved through the lobby, their voices echoing off the marble floors. The staff was busy, preparing the final touches for the guests. Lena felt a little out of place at first, standing in the wings of the stage while the other performers rehearsed. She watched them, wondering if she could ever feel as confident as they did. One by one, they took their turns, their music filling the room. It was beautiful, professional, everything Lena wasn't sure she could be. But when it was finally her turn, something inside her clicked. It was her moment. Mr. Hahn appeared beside her, smiling kindly. "You're up, Lena, ready?" Lena nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. "I think so." He gave her a small but reassuring smile. "Just be yourself. That's all anyone needs to see." She took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, feeling the spotlight hit her before she even reached the piano. The lights were blinding at first, but once she sat down and positioned her hands over the keys, everything else faded away. The audience wasn't there. The stage wasn't there. All that was left was the music. Her fingers brushed over the keys lightly at first, testing the sound. The silence in the room was thick, the anticipation almost tangible. She could hear the quiet rustling of people in their seats, the sound of their breath held in expectation. She closed her eyes for a second, letting herself sink into the music, into the quiet comfort that the piano had always given her. And then, without thinking, she played the first note. The sound felt perfect, smooth and full, just like she had imagined. As she moved into the melody, she felt her body relax. The nerves that had consumed her earlier started to dissolve. replaced by a sense of calm and focus. She played, not thinking of the audience or the pressure, but just letting the music carry her. The rhythm flowed through her fingertips, and before she knew it, the first song had ended. She opened her eyes to a round of applause, a sound so warm and full that it almost took her breath away. But there was no time to think about it. She moved into the second piece, a little more complex, a little faster, but still the same simple joy of playing for the love of it. The more she played, the more comfortable she became. Her hands moved with confidence, and the music seemed to take on a life of its own. The audience sat in rapt attention, some even leaning forward, mesmerized by the emotion she put into every note. As the final piece came to an end, the silence in the room stretched for a few moments. And then, like a wave crashing, the applause erupted. Lena's heart raced, her palms damp with sweat, but she couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. She had done it. Mr. Hahn was waiting for her backstage, his expression unreadable at first. But then he nodded slowly, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You were fantastic, truly." Lena smiled, her hand still trembling. "Thank you." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lena greeted a few guests who complimented her performance, but she didn't hear most of what they said. Her mind was still spinning from the experience. The adrenaline was wearing off, but the joy, the deep, quiet joy of having played from the heart, remained. At the end of the night, when most of the guests had left, Lena found herself standing alone in the empty ballroom. The chairs were stacked, the music was over, and everything was calm again. It was then that she realized something important. She wasn't just performing for the people in the room. She had played for herself. She had rediscovered something that she had buried long ago. The music was a part of her, a part that had always been there, waiting to be heard. As she stepped out of the ballroom into the cool night air, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing a text from May. "You were amazing, Lena. I'm so proud of you." Lena smiled, the warmth of her friend's words filling her chest. She couldn't explain what it was about tonight, what had clicked inside her, but she felt more like herself than she had in years. More than just a waitress, more than just someone passing through life. She felt like an artist again. And when Mr. Hahn called her the next morning to offer her more opportunities, Lena didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, the word coming so easily. "I'll take it." The fear was still there, lurking in the background, but it was quieter now. She had stepped onto that stage and faced it head-on, and in doing so, she had found something she thought she had lost: her place in the music. The next few weeks brought more offers, more practice, and more growth. Lena's life began to shift, one performance at a time. She wasn't sure where it would all lead, but she knew one thing for sure: she was no longer hiding from what she loved. The music had found her again, and this time she was ready to listen. Weeks passed, and Lena's life began to change in ways she hadn't expected. What started as one small step onto a stage had snowballed into something bigger than she could have ever imagined. Each performance felt like a new piece of herself falling back into place. She wasn't just playing music. She was reconnecting with something deeper, something she had almost forgotten was there. The first few concerts were small, charity events, local gatherings, and quiet evenings at the hotel. But the more she played, the more Lena felt the music flow through her. It became easier to step up to the piano, easier to lose herself in the rhythm and melody. The nerves that had once paralyzed her were now a familiar presence, something she could manage, something she could work with. It was still there, but it no longer had control. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a small cafe, Lena sat alone at the bar, a glass of water in front of her. Her hands still tingled from the keys, but her mind was quieter now, more at peace. She glanced around the room, catching glimpses of the guests chatting, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a far cry from the silence she had felt just a few months ago, before music had crept back into her life. "You were incredible tonight," the cafe owner said, as he wiped down the counter nearby. His voice was warm, and he smiled as he spoke. "The crowd loved you." Lena smiled back, still in a daze from the performance. "Thank you. It felt good." He leaned against the counter. "I've been thinking. There's a bigger event coming up next month, and I'd like to recommend you for it." Lena blinked, surprised. "A bigger event?" "Yeah," he nodded. "It's a local music festival. There will be a lot of people there, and I think they'll love what you do. You should think about it." For a moment, Lena's heart skipped a beat. A music festival? She had never imagined performing in front of that many people. The thought made her feel both excited and terrified. I don't know, she said, unsure. That sounds a bit too big for me, the cafe owner chuckled. I get it. It's a big step, but you've got something people connect with. That's rare. Don't hide from it. Lena was quiet for a moment. The thought of performing at a festival, with hundreds of people watching, felt like a leap too far. She hadn't prepared for that. But then again, maybe she didn't need to prepare. She was already here, standing in front of people, playing from her heart. Maybe that was enough. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. The cafe owner smiled widely. I'll send them your details. Don't worry about the crowd. Just do what you do. That night, Lena lay in bed, her mind racing again. She had agreed to something big, something that felt overwhelming, but deep down she knew it was the right step. Every performance had brought her closer to herself, to the music that had always been a part of her. This could be the moment she stepped fully into who she was meant to be. But the days leading up to the festival were full of nerves. Lena practiced more than ever, trying to find the right balance between preparing and letting go. She worked on new pieces, practiced old ones, and even tried to compose something of her own. But no matter how much she practiced, the fear didn't go away. It stayed with her just below the surface, reminding her of everything that could go wrong. The morning of the festival, she felt sick with nerves. The event was held in a large outdoor venue, and hundreds of people were expected to attend. She was no longer just playing for a handful of guests at a hotel or a small cafe. This was bigger. This was real. Her phone buzzed just as she was about to leave her apartment. It was a message from May. You're going to be amazing. I just know it. Don't stress. You've got this. Lena smiled faintly, though her stomach still churned with uncertainty. When she arrived at the venue, she was met by a team of organizers who showed her to the backstage area. The stage was enormous and the sound equipment was intimidating. It felt like another world. The other performers were getting ready, tuning instruments and rehearsing their lines. The entire atmosphere was filled with excitement and energy, and yet Lena felt like she didn't belong there. As she stood in the wings, watching the other artists, she couldn't help but feel a little out of place. These people were professionals. They had been doing this for years. What did she know about performing at a festival? But as the minutes passed and she watched the performers on stage, something inside her clicked. This wasn't about being perfect or professional. It was about sharing the music, about connecting with the audience. And for the first time, she realized that she had something to offer. Her journey wasn't about the size of the stage or the number of people watching. It was about the music, the emotion, and what it meant to her. Her name was called, and she walked onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The crowd was much bigger than she had imagined. There were lights shining down on her, blinding her for a moment. The microphone in front of her felt too close, too intimidating. But then she remembered what May had said, and she took a deep breath. She sat down at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. The audience grew quiet, waiting for her to begin. She looked out into the crowd, feeling the weight of their eyes on her. But she didn't let it stop her. She closed her eyes for a moment, and then she started to play. At first, the melody was shaky, as if she was still adjusting to the unfamiliarity of the situation. But then as she got lost in the music, everything else faded away. The crowd disappeared. The lights didn't matter anymore. It was just her and the piano, the music flowing through her. She played through the first piece, letting each note settle into her, feeling the music resonate in her chest. She moved into the next song, a little faster, a little more complex, but by then the nerves had faded. She was no longer playing for approval or recognition. She was playing for the joy of it, for the peace it brought her. When the final note echoed through the venue, the silence that followed felt like a breath held. For a few moments, no one moved, no one spoke. And then, as if on cue, the crowd erupted into applause. Lena's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had stood on that stage and shared her music with hundreds of people, and they had listened. They had felt it. The standing ovation that followed left her speechless. She stood there, her hands trembling, her heart racing as the crowd clapped and cheered. It was a moment of validation, a moment that told her she was on the right path. Backstage, the organizers were thrilled. That was amazing, one of them said, grinning. "You've got something special, Lena." Lena didn't know how to respond. She was still in a daze from the performance. It had felt like a dream, a moment that was both real and unreal at the same time. But as she walked off the stage, something inside her shifted. She had faced her fear, and she had done more than survive. She had thrived. The days following the festival were a whirlwind. Offers began to pour in from other venues and event organizers. People were talking about her performance, and the messages kept coming. But it wasn't the attention that mattered most to Lena. It was the music, the feeling of playing, of connecting with others through what she loved most. Her mother, upon hearing the news, could barely contain her joy. "I'm so proud of you, Lena. I always knew you had this in you." Lena smiled, the weight of it all finally settling in. "It's not just about the performances. It's about finding who I am again." I almost forgot what it felt like. That night, as she sat by the window looking out at the city lights, Lena realized something. The music wasn't just a part of her past. It was her future. And for the first time in years, she felt ready to embrace it fully. She didn't know exactly where this new journey would take her, but she knew one thing. It would be her journey. The music had always been there, waiting for her, and now she was ready to walk alongside it wherever it led.